Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the very next episode of The Remedy with Tova Sido and
Janice Gaunt and
Tom Bridwell.
Yay!
I had somebody text me this week, who is this Tom fellow?
Did you say, oh, let me tell you, sit down, girl.
He's so cool. You don't even know.
That's hilarious. I can only imagine.
Okay, we need to thank our sponsor today, Matt and Aaron Rigg out of Austin. They actually live in an awesome suburb of Dripping Springs.
Oh, yeah.
Of just outside of. He's a fabulous home builder. They're one of my favorite couples of all time.
Nice.
Yeah, they're so cool. And they're huge fans of The Remedy. Listen all the time. I think she waits for it to hit on Mondays.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So they sponsored this week and next.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. They gave a nice little pop.
Good.
I know. I love when I hear that ching ching on Venmo.
Oh, does it ching ching?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
If you have your volume up, the Venmo goes, I'll send you like $1 after, and you can turn your volume on. And you'll hear how satisfying the money sounds.
Cha-ching.
Cha-ching. That's exactly So when I get one of those, and I know that like I just didn't finish counseling or something, I know it's for The Remedy, and I'm like, sure like that sound.
That's hilarious.
We just make it really easy for you to sponsor. So if you have not sponsored and you're interested in contributing to what we're doing, we would really appreciate it. You can just Venmo at Tova-Sido. And thank you.
Yes,
so thank you
so
Matt
much.
and Aaron, one of my favorites in the world. Okay, so we had somebody write in and ask if we would consider talking about how to find your own faith path after like you've grown up a certain way. And then it's time to like shuffle the cards and figure out what game you want to play. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? And I was like, you know what? That is a fabulous topic.
It's a great topic.
Mm-hmm. So what do you like about it? What speaks to you about it?
Well, I think we each probably have a story about how our lives took the path that it took. Mm-hmm. And I think that what happens so often is that we are raised in a family system that has a certain faith and a certain certain practices that they do to keep their faith going and all of that. And then as we grow up, then sometimes we kind of take what we like and leave the rest because it might not fit us exactly the same. And that's pretty much what happened to me. I grew up in I was born in Lubbock, Texas, but I lived in Brownfield, which is a little town outside of Lubbock, about 30 miles. And my parents we were in the First Baptist Church. It was a very evangelical, fundamental Baptist church. And my dad was very involved in the church, and my mom was also. My grandparents, my mother's mother and father grew up in that Baptist church too, which was really interesting because my grandfather was he was a member of a group of people that did really not very good things to other people, and yet he was a deacon of the church, and he owned the electricity company. And one day he came in the church and took somebody out by holding the collar and punched them because they hadn't paid their electric bill. But anyway, it was a kind of convoluted, they believed in all of this, but they really didn't act act like it in a lot of ways. So then my parents, my dad grew up a Methodist, and then my mother grew up in this Southern Baptist church, and then they went to the Baptist church, and my father, I can remember when I was probably in second grade, is where we would go to church a lot. We'd go to church in the morning for Sunday school, and then we'd have church, and then I'd sing and go to choir practice, and then we'd have training union, and then we would have nighttime church. So on Sunday, we would go to church for 5 hours, and then we had revivals, and then we would go every day for a week. So there was a lot of going to church. And
how often were the revivals?
Like probably the revivals probably happened, 4 times a year, or maybe 5 times a year. And so it was in that church, there was a lot of discussion about hell and about burning in hell and living the rest of your life in hell if you didn't believe exactly what they were saying. And I can remember and they would have an altar call at the end of the service, and they would say, anybody who wants to proclaim Jesus Christ as their Lord, they can come down front, and then they would baptize them later on, and I mean, I did that like 5 times.
Oh, I
just kept going.
Scared.
I was scared to death because that minister would pound on the podium and scream about burning in hell and stuff like that. And I was like, ooh, I better go down one more time, make sure I got my bases covered.
Yeah.
But it was very, 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 very strict like that. And then when my parents moved to Lubbock, they continued at the Baptist church, and it too was a pretty evangelical Baptist church, and but it was a little less because it was a bigger church. It was actually one of the second largest Baptist churches in the United States. So they had a big membership. And my dad, he was voted in as a deacon, but he was going to have to not ever have a beer or any alcohol as a deacon. So he passed on it. He said, and he was not a big drinker at all, but he didn't want to do that. And so anyway, so we had a lot of that, a whole lot of right, wrong, good, bad, all or nothing. And then when, as I got older, I just really second guessed a lot of that. I just didn't. I just did not believe that there was only one path to God.
When you were growing up, and listening to it, I know you behaved out of fear, but was there a part of your brain that was like, I don't know if I actually really believe this?
Well, I believed it because they were so excited about screaming about it, And there was I remember walking down this hallway in the church. I can shut my eyes and picture it. And there was this door that was locked, and I was with my little friend, and I was like, I think Jesus lives in that closet. And she goes, oh, we should open it. And I was like, no, I'm too scared. I'm so scared. So I didn't. Well, later on in life, I continued along that path and did some pretty rigid Bible studies and some stuff like that. But then I just started, it just didn't settle with me. I just kept thinking, like I went to this one Bible study, and you couldn't, if you were a leader, you couldn't have a drink or have a glass of wine or anything like that. There were a whole lot of do's and don'ts and that sort of thing. And it just didn't feel right for me, and so then I just started kind of reevaluating what my beliefs were, and I actually talked with a minister about it, and he said, I think that you should get some index cards, and I want you to write down every scripture that talks about love. And I think that what you've been raised with was a lot of punishment and
Fear.
And so what I want you to realize is that it's just love. So I started going through my Bible and writing down on these cards every love scripture I could come up with, and I would sit in carpool line and just go over, and I just brainwashed myself into believing that
God was love.
And that was enough for me. And it totally changed my perspective about all of it, you know? And so, and I don't know what's right and I don't know what's wrong, but what I do know is I know what's right for me. And that's okay with me, you know? And the more that I focused on that, the easier it became for me to have faith because I wasn't walking around looking and, you know, thinking, that person ain't going to make it. They'll go to the pearly gates and they're going to send them south, you know, or, you know, it just cleared it up for me and gave me a totally different perspective. So that's basically that's how that journey took place for me. And I did appreciate all that I had before because it was what gave me the fire to go find my own truth.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so I feel like that was just God working in my life. And what I've learned too is that for me, at least with religious and spiritual things, I just have to keep it really simple because that's where I feel peace and safety in that.
So
you know?
Last week we talked about estrangement, and you know, for a lot of families, religion there is the right way, and then there's the wrong way,
Right.
and so for a lot of families, you know, what the parents are raising the children a certain way because they believe that that's the way that the children need to go.
Yeah.
And so when the child, which I think is completely normal and age appropriate, says, thanks for the introduction of this thought process, I'm going to go ahead and figure out my thought process, you know, and what I believe. A lot of parents, especially if that, like I grew up in a Mormon tradition, and there's the right way and then there's the wrong way. And I know a lot of Jewish traditions. Like if there was a person who grew up Jewish and then they're like, I don't want to be Jewish anymore, that feels very personal, could feel very personal to the family. Like a personal blow to the family. And that can deeply affect the relationships between the family and at times estrangement.
Yeah.
And so how as parents do we not take our children's decisions about their personal faith so personal?
Well, I think it's getting to the place of understanding that it is a personal awakening. It is a spiritual awakening that happens within that individual. And if we don't allow people, I believe that if we don't allow people to have the space to take what they like and leave the rest and incorporate that into their knowing which I believe is what connects our head with our heart.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, okay. So then that was that individualized spirituality that I believe that if we seek it, we'll find it.
Absolutely.
And so it's not personal.
It isn't.
It's not. If my children I don't know, if they went to a totally different off the edge for something like that, but they believed it with all their heart, I'd be like, okay.
And it brings them peace.
And it brings them peace and it brings them security and it brings them joy. And it's, you know, and I think that that's what the whole idea is around spirituality and even religiosity.
Yeah.
And they're two different things.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So what made you, Tova, what made you, when you left the Mormon church, and then Tom, I want to make sure, because you grew up in a real strict religious environment too, right?
I wouldn't say strict, but definitely consistent. I mean, every Sunday, but not strict like shaming kind of stuff. Nothing like that.
Did you believe in hell?
I mean, yes, because I just kind of thought if there's one, there's the other. I guess, you know.
Yeah. Never heard that before, but that makes sense to me. I understand why it would make sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I grew up in a very, very, as you know, and a lot of listeners know because I've talked about it before, very conservative Mormon religion. And the Mormon religion really does believe they are right and they have the truth. And that everybody else suffers because they don't have the truth.
Yeah.
And so they feel very elite and lucky and blessed, chosen, that they have been given the true gospel of Jesus Christ. And so the rest of us are just kind of like, don't have
We gotta
access.
pretend.
Yeah, we don't have access. But you know, I grew up very Mormon. I played by all the rules and did all the things because that was my family. But I remember, even as a small child, I remember thinking, because it was a lot of the same kind of thing as you, like you do this, you're going to hell. There's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And I remember that verse like scaring the living shit out of me.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't want to weep and I didn't want my teeth to gnash and I didn't want my hair to burn. And so that scared me. And God was scary, kind of like you talked about, like Jesus is in the closet. Well, I mean, I was scared to death that when Jesus came again, because what was he going to see in me? All my terrible sin, you know, because I was just a sinful human. Because I stole a piece of bubble gum? I don't know. And so there was something inside of me. It's interesting that could never reconcile the Jesus that I was reading about and the Jesus they were talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know that he's that scary. Yeah. I don't know that he's that mean. It was kind of like, go look up all the love verses. Yes.
Yeah.
He eats with sinners. He likes prostitutes. He hangs with tax collectors. He forgives everybody. He forgave the people who hung him the day that they did it, you know? And so I was like, why? And so the second I left BYU, and if you're going to BYU, you have to be Mormon. You have to go to church. You have to do all the things. But the second I left, I think I went back to church one time and then I went into a Mormon church from my mom's funeral. And And so I had to really just dig deep and find my own path. And I love my path. The interesting thing, and I've been I introduced my children to my faith, but I have been very open and very find your own, find your joy. You know, it's interesting because when I was doing it my parents' way, it wasn't my way. It wasn't authentic. I was just going through the motions. Mm-hmm. And so this spiritual relationship practice, religiosity that I was completely inauthentic. And it was really some of the most unhappy times personally that I've ever been, and confused.
Yeah, me too.
When I found my own path is when I found my peace. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I want for my children. Find your own path so that you can find your peace.
Well, and we're told, seek and you shall find.
Amen.
So look around for it and it'll show up.
And it will.
Yeah.
It really will.
Yeah.
So what about you, Tom? Where have you landed your plane?
Well, I left Abilene when I was, 18 to go to college, went to Lawrence, Kansas, and that was a pretty eye-opening experience. I had grown up in the Methodist church, went every single Sunday in Abilene, Texas, and then went to this liberal school in Lawrence, Kansas, probably the only liberal county in that whole state.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, if I'm being honest here, I started experimenting with drugs because I was in bands and had many late night conversations with like philosophy teachers. One of the guys in my band was actually a philosophy professor at Kansas.
Wow.
And I got kicked out of my fraternity at the end of my freshman year, and he took me in for the last 2 weeks of college, and that was probably the most influential time spiritually that I had, just talking to this guy every night.
So what was his take on all of that?
Well, he was agnostic, and he convinced me, or he helped me understand the difference between Christian, agnostic, and atheist. And I've, to this day, I sort of believe that atheists and Christians are equal. They just, one thinks they're right on the opposite side, and an agnostic is sort of on the fence. And it's funny, I feel like as an agnostic, I have faith that I'm going to find out and it's going to all work out, just as long as I live my life like I was taught in the church. But as far as religion and believing that there's all of the dogma and everything in the Bible is like the law, I mean, that is definitely not where I've landed.
And so do you feel, as a dad, do you feel any sort of obligation or pull?
I am certainly allowing Betty, my daughter, to go. She goes to a Catholic school because that's what her mother wanted, and I was not going to stand in, like, I'm thankful for my upbringing in the Methodist Church. I'm not. I think it was great. I'm so thankful that I got that. So I want Betty to have the same sort of upbringing. But if and when she gets to the point where maybe if she falls away from the church, I'm obviously not going to stand in the way of that either. Like my parents definitely were. They definitely did not like the influence of my college years. Like it still kind of troubles my dad a little bit that I'm agnostic, and he gets over it, but I will not be that way with Betty. If she finds wherever she lands and however she finds it is going to be 100% okay with me.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of truth, is that truth finds us one way or another. You know, whether it's through the Catholic Church or through the Baptist Church or an agnostic group that is philosophically based or whatever. So, and I think that that's the miracle of all of it, is that we don't have to go searching, because it will kind of find us. It'll quicken us in some way.
Oh, I like that word. You know, I think this conversation is important for us collectively as a people, because if you think about how, it's kind of funny, like how you look at faith and spirituality and religion, how I look at faith and spirituality and religion, and then Tom, how you do it. It's three very different, ways. And but I think that's a beautiful thing. And I hope as a society, we're moving a lot more toward an acceptance of, this is my way. It doesn't have to be your way, and it doesn't have to be Tom's way. Respecting, like two of my 4 siblings are still very much involved in the Mormon religion. It brings them an inordinate amount of peace. I have great respect for that. I would never dog them for that. I would never shame them for that. And I mean, they look at me and they don't dog or shame me. It's just, but I think that mindset used to be a little more prevalent, and I think we're moving toward, this is what I believe, what do you believe? Conversation.
Have you ever read that book, Same Kind of Different as Me?
Love that book.
I love that book too, because I think that
life-changing book.
It addresses that same kind of mentality, or the thought process is, oh, look, there you are, you're so different, and you're exactly, your
the
difference
same.
is my same difference. And
Totally.
it's so true.
Yes.
And I love that. And I think I think that for me, that one of the things that set me free from all of that right, wrong, good, bad, all or nothing was that the thing that set me free from that was knowing that I didn't know. Is that I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And then when I realized that I don't know, but I kind of think this could be it, you know. So then it just kind of melds into something that resonates in us, that helps us go along that path.
I think that's a beautiful way to say it. I know for me, I know what works for me. I know what speaks to me. I know what feels good to me. I know where my peace comes from. I know for Tova, but I don't know for Janice.
Yeah.
And I don't know for Tom, and I don't know for Carter.
And I don't
George,
need to know.
or Anna Prin. And I don't need to know. And, you know, Anna Prin and Carter have gone to college, and each of them have found their own path. You know, they have found churches to go to, and they go to Bible studies that they really enjoy. They did that all on their own, you know,
Yeah.
and this now it's their journey. Like, put your wings on and go figure it out and find your peace. And I promise I will respect it. As long as you don't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, spirituality and religion and all that, I don't think that should ever be hurtful.
No, I don't either.
That I feel like all I'm really doing is just not taking a position. I know it's a little bit of maybe a cop out, but I've seen both sides. I see the scientific, you know, evolution side, and then I see the creationism and religious side, and both of those sides think they are right. Christians know there's a God, and atheists know that there isn't. And I feel like they're basically the same type of person, and I'd rather just kind of sit and wait, because what I know
It's all gonna
is
come.
that they don't know.
You know,
That's the
and
thing, is like, I'm just sitting here waiting to see what happens.
well, and you know what else? What's interesting about that is if you don't take a position, that is a position.
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
position to not take a position.
Totally.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like, I don't know is an answer. I don't
Exactly.
know is an answer.
It is.
And you know what? I
Beats
know
me.
what works for me, but I don't big no.
No.
You know, I don't big no. I'm not going to pretend and tell you that this is the truth and this is the only way, you know?
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So I think you said it perfectly, Tom.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And you know, I think that what I like about this is that when we can take a position of no position, that's an absolute position, then we are setting ourselves up to love other people and to allow them to love themselves and for them to allow themselves to love us. So whenever we are right, wrong, good, bad, all or nothing, black or white, it keeps people at arm's length, and that's not what any of it is supposed to be about, in my opinion.
It is definitely
agree
not like, I don't get hung up about so many of I feel like a lot of the social issues that are continuing to make people argue and it just sort of plague us, is some of it is religious based. And that's the fun thing about being agnostic, is that I don't have to be hung up about a lot of these social issues over religion because of that. So it keeps, I'm able to keep my mind open and not let that get in the way. But, you know, to each his own.
To your answer, Janice, I could not agree more that I think no matter where you stand, if we as people choose love, like, I wish that was a religion, you know?
Well, it kind of is.
Well, I agree with that. It is for me. But I just think if we all just subscribe to that mindset, that would sure make the world a better place.
And I don't think we have to figure it out. I don't.
We're not going to.
No,
whether we
figure it
think-
out is not a belief. It's just, it's going to make you crazy if you try too hard to figure it out. And just be okay not knowing, because we can still be okay being in the process of becoming or in the process of knowing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen when I take my life breath, but I do think that something happens
Oh,
that is going to be really beautiful.
I could not agree more.
And I like that.
Yeah, I trust that.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's where a lot of you and I's peace comes.
Yeah, I think so
because
too.
we don't have a lot of fear about this life or the next.
No.
It's kind of a great place to be.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, go with love. We hope you have an amazing week, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, bye. Thanks for listening. Did I slur my words?
No, you were good.